today. It's something that we dabble in from time to time, but it's not something we talk about all the time. But it's pertinent today because right now the fighting game community, or FGC for short, are kind of going to war a little bit. What do I mean by that? Well, there is a debate amongst the competitive fighting game community about old versus new. And the debate is really sparking now because there's a few fighting games that are currently in development. There's the one that's the League of Legends ones. What is it? 2XKO or something. The worst name ever. Really bad idea. Probably going to flop anyway. And then there's this other game coming out, the Invincible fighting game. Okay. It's been revealed that both of these fighting games will not have motion inputs for special moves. Well, what do I mean by that? I mean, normally when you do a special move in a fighting game, it's like, oh, down, down, forward, forward, quarter circle plus punch. Or it's charge back, then forward plus a button. No, this game is literally just going to be tap a button, special move. Or hold forward, tap a button, different special move. Up forward and a button, anti-air special move. So no execution is actually required to play the game. None. You won't have to practice motions or inputs or anything like that. Everything will be instantly accessible to everyone who plays the game when they're released. And so a debate began about, is this good or bad for fighting games? Because the whole point of showing that you're good or competitive at a fighting game has to do with not only just knowledge of how the game mechanics work, but also physical skill, timing, practicing, etc. So to give you an example here, and I've heard this kind of tossed around, imagine if right now, Major League Baseball, instead of using metal or wooden bats, the standard baseball, the full-size diamond and all of that, just decided they were going to downgrade and now play on Little League fields. Out of nowhere. We're just going to play in very smaller fields now. And you know what? Instead of playing with those hard metal or wood bats and those standard we're going to now play with wiffle ball equipment. So it's accessible to everyone. Because even a small child can stand on a Little League field, which is tiny, and have a wiffle ball bat and crack that ball and get a home run. So since everyone can do it, it'll make it accessible to everyone. But it won't matter because you're only going to be doing well if you're still a pro player and if you have skill. Wait, what? So you see, when you put it in that perspective, it seems a little different, but it's the same thing. Really, fighting games, or any competitive game, okay, have two levels of challenge. The actual physical execution and the mental game. If you take out any physical challenge of actually playing a fighting game, meaning I need an actual timed input that I need to practice physically and commit to muscle memory to be able to do it. If you remove that from the factor of the competitive play, now it just becomes a mental game. But is it the same? So this has been a big debate in the FGC recently, and they're arguing back and forth various different opinions on this. But now, this has actually become a different discussion entirely, as now it's become, are modern fighting games just in general, even when it comes to the mental game, just too easy? Why is it that a lot of players from back in the day don't really want to play modern fighting games anymore? They've all fallen off. Why does it seem like now there's an entirely new generation of players that have stepped up and are competitively good at fighting games? But what happened to the old guard, right? And so there's all these different opinions. You got a lot of old school players who've been saying modern fighting games, sadly, are just not very good. Modern fighting games are based on getting one hit, playing with a pattern, guessing game kind of stuff, 50-50s. This is not what fighting games were meant to be. They're not good. Modern gamers or newcomers who have only really been playing competitive fighting games in the last 1 to 2 gens are like, those are just boomers. Those are just old school people who are disgruntled. They can't hang anymore. They're not good enough to play at a competitive level with modern fighting games, and therefore they can't keep up and they're angry. This is their, sour grapes that they can't hang anymore. That's why they talk shit about modern fighting games. So there's this interesting debate going on. And I'd like to show you, there's actually a really good video from the YouTube channel Button Check. Now, Button Check is someone who I've watched his content before on this very show. He's actually responded to things that I've said on this show before, and he did a good video about it. But it's kind of funny because the discussion is good, but the person involved in the discussion is kind of silly. But I'll show you what I mean. All right, but before we do that, we got a couple more shout-outs to do. Hard Weekly, thanks for another $2 super chat. I don't know what you're talking about decluttering my desk, but thanks for the money. And I got a $1.11 tip from the guy who likes to talk about diarrhea, but he says, for the next reward, play Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. Well, when you say the next reward, I assume you mean like the next marathon. Well, fair enough. We need to think about what the next event will be. When we hit this July 4th event, that's going to be the Indivestment Day or Indivestance Day. But then we have to figure out what's the next marathon after that. So we'll start talking about that soon. Thank you for your opinion there. Actually, you're one of the people who suggested the Five Nights at Freddy's marathon earlier in the year, and it worked out really well. Okay, so Here we go again, indeed. Let me see if this is going to look good or not. Hold on 1 second. I'm tiny. Let me blow myself up a little bit. I'm like really small. Okay. All right, so the debate right now, as you can see, FGC boomers are miserable because players are better now. The FGC debates. Let's see what's going on over in the FGC. Every once in a while, I like to poke my head over there and see what's happening. As you know, I'm a very unique position because even though I'm well-versed in fighting games and I have a wealth of knowledge about them, I'm not part of the FGC. I stopped caring about competing and traveling and that grind life. I just don't care. I'm much more happy as a variety content creator on YouTube. And it's funny because the FGC hates me, even though I've literally never done a damn thing to them. They actually, did you know that the common person in the FGC actually believes that I am permanently banned from tournament play and cannot attend a tournament? Were you aware of this? Where did they get that idea? I have no clue. I've never been banned from a single tournament in my life. I could go wherever I want right now. It's just about a decade ago, if you remember, I'd say it was around 2012, 2013. I decided I just didn't want to do it anymore. That I didn't find it rewarding. I didn't think it was going to make sense. I was becoming a variety creator on YouTube and I was enjoying what I was doing and I wanted to put all my time and effort into that. But the FGC actually says shit like that. Like, yeah, Phil's just permanently banned because no one likes him. And like, actually, that's not true at all. You're just an idiot. You made it up because you're a dunce. And you like to believe these toxic memes. And you're like, what are you talking about? Where'd that even come from? You know what I'm saying? Like, anyway, let's hear a little bit of this topic and let's see what I can do to chime in. Here we go.
Again, we got a hot one.
That is really low volume, isn't it? Hold on. Let me see here. I just want to make sure we can hear it.
Okay, so somebody by the name of King Scrub, gotta love that name, right? Posted this, I believe just yesterday, saying, I pray I never see myself become one of these miserable FGC boomers. They constantly bring up the past games and try to downplay the achievement of the next generation. The older games were harder mechanically, but the competition now is much deeper. Players are just better now. Well,
first off, I'm not going to downplay anything that a modern FGC player does. I don't think I've ever said something like, oh, that guy Punk to God sucks ass and he could never play an old game. Or what's that guy, Mena RD, the best Blanca player? Oh, screw him. He's a scrub. I wouldn't say stuff like that, okay? But admittedly, I will say, having played the old school fighters at a competitive level and being successful at them back then and playing modern fighters today, abso-freaking-lutely. Oh, it was too low? People are saying it was way too low? Seriously? All right, I'm going to bump the volume all the way up then. It looked like it was fine for me. Abso-freaking-lutely. Modern games are easy mode to play. You can easily jump into a modern game and lab for a little bit and immediately learn the meta of the game because people posted it all over the internet. With zero effort, you can know the top tier strategies within a few days of the game being out. And there you are, you're ready to go. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be a Punk to God or a Mena. You're not. But you could still play them at a competitive level. Back in the day, it was very different. You literally had to grind and grind and grind in arcades and tournaments. You had to travel the world. There was no online play. There was no tech posted up all over the internet. None of this was accessible. It was all about your time, dedication, hard work, money investment, and all of that to even learn the meta of a fighting game. Today, everyone knows the meta within a week. Everyone. All you got to do is open YouTube and you learn the meta. Okay? So there is a difference between saying there's the modern players, are as good or better or worse, but the difference is the execution. Like right now, if you were to ask me if a top modern player could do the one frame links and crazy execution needed to play fighting games from back in the day, the answer is probably no. But does that mean that they're bad at fighting games? No. They're good at the modern fighting games, which is more of a mind game kind of a deal than it is execution. So there is a difference there. Now, would you say, well, do they suck? Are they scrubs? I mean, no, they've learned the meta of what the modern game is, okay? I would argue in that statement, the reason that the fighting game boomers are always criticizing modern fighting games is not because they're too easy to play and any scrub can jump in. The problem is they're not fun, okay? They're just not fun to play. If you played fighting games back in the day and you had to grind to learn tech, you had to practice over and over ad nauseum to learn these tough, difficult frame links and inputs and special moves, that was a level of experience that you felt accomplished. Man, I played the shit out of that game, but now I can play at a top level, and no one else can just jump on this cabinet and play it like I can because they haven't put in the time investment and the money or whatever it is. Today, literally anyone could buy Street Fighter 6, lab for 12 hours by watching YouTube videos and have the same execution as you. That's frustrating, isn't it? I can understand why someone in the FGC who was back in the day playing these games competitively and now they're playing the modern ones like, what is this easy mode shit? I get that. But the thing is the difference of enjoyment. Someone who never had that enjoyment experience of sitting there at a cabinet, playing, practicing, and mastering the hard stuff to do, and then executing it and getting that feeling of, wow, validation, and it's worth it. It's kind of like today when you played a Soulsborne game, right? Why is it that people like them so much? Well, you get your ass handed to you a million times, but then when you finally beat that difficult boss or get past that crazy part of a dungeon you couldn't beat, you feel this feeling of self-worth and accomplishment because you beat a tough challenge. Today, there is no tough challenge to overcome playing a modern fighting game. And so something is lost. And that's why I think a lot of the people from back in the day playing the older games are saying there's no feeling of fun or satisfaction playing a modern fighting game anymore. You took that away from us when you dumbed it down for the masses. I think that's where the disconnect is. The more modern generation seems to think that the old generation doesn't like modern fighters because, oh, everyone can just play it at a high level. No, it's because you took out the challenge factor of the grind, of the, again, the frame links, the timing. That level of execution is gone, and that was what was fun. Seriously, back in the day, when you watched a tournament, and you saw someone pulling off something completely unique and challenging and different, you were blown away and you could watch a match and be like, oh, I know that's Sanford Kelly playing. Because I know that's how he plays because he does unique stuff that only he can do because of his level of expertise, right? Today you watch a Street Fighter 6 tournament and you see someone playing Cammy or Bison and you have absolutely no idea who's playing until you look at the names on the screen to tell you because everyone plays exactly the same because the game's too easy to learn and the meta is the same for everybody. When you take that level of challenge out, the physical challenge and the timing and all that out, now everyone becomes samey. The game becomes too commonplace and boring. It's not fun to play nor to watch unless you're ignorant of the fact that the execution was supposed to be part of the challenge and fun to begin with because you never had that level of challenge in your games. You've only played easy mode, baby mode games. There you go.
Starting off right here, Flash Metroid have something to say.
Can you guys hear the video? If not, I'll pump up the volume. It is max, so that means I would have to actually go and make the volume much louder in my capture setup. I guess people are saying it's way low. All right, let me pump it up. It's still too low? All right. I'm going to bump it up by, say, 10 decibels. Holy crap. Now let's see if you guys can hear.
You see right here saying, this idea that players are better today is hilarious and definitely false. I see FGC reacting, if I could talk Damascus right here, saying, in my opinion, players are better is wrong. There is more high-level players than before is the correct statement. Okay.
That's interesting. It's not that the players are better. It's that there's more players who play at a high level, but it doesn't mean that they were better than the previous. Huh.
Flash responds to that saying, I'm not sure if that's even correct. Are there a lot of new high-level players? I guess it would depend on what level you call high level.
Yes. There is almost no one right now placing or winning modern fighting game tournaments who was a high-level player from back in the day. The players from back in the day are all done or retired. They're not playing anymore. This is a whole new generation. So I don't know what Flash is saying there. He's completely wrong. But for the record, it's funny. A lot of people are criticizing Flash Metroid for getting involved in this discussion because Flash Metroid was someone who did play fighting games back in the day, but was a youngster, all right? Or on my day when I was, in my 20s and I was competing and getting good, he was an up-and-comer, all right? During the era of Street Fighter 4, he actually became good. So he would be considered a 09er and not an OG. He's not even one of the older people that are really being discussed in this, but he interjects himself into it. So
Damascus responds to this saying, Street Fighter wise, if you compare 6 to 4 and you see the vast majority of elite Street Fighter 4 players are still active top players in 6, and you have to add this with all the players who started after 5, plus the amount of players who can beat elite players is way bigger for sure.
The hilarious part about that is you notice they're only mentioning Street Fighter 4. Nothing existed before Street Fighter 4, right, guys? No games. You're not even talking about the old games. You're talking 4, 5, and 6 are the modern trilogy of Street Fighter. That's not the OG games, the old games. So their discussion is even off base because they're even talking about games like Street Fighter 4 was the beginning of fighting games having dumbed down inputs and easy mode combos. You could just double tap down forward on your joystick and press punch and get a Shoryuken. You didn't even have to do the input. So even the people like Flash is arguing, oh, Street Fighter 4 is better than 6. Yeah, but 4 also was baby mode. It was before then when the games were actually harder to play.
Then Flash Metroid responds to that with the fucking list. I guess 4 versus 6. If you compare EVO 2014 to EVO 2024, the competition is roughly the same for elite players. Elite players these days have to go through a lot more mediocre / good players to get to the elite players. At the end of the day, nothing is real until top 100-ish. And it's been that way forever. All right, how you feel about that? That's a pretty good point, I guess. Nothing is real until you get to the top 100 before. Doesn't really matter.
I don't know about that because being someone who's been in tournament before, all right, man, when you have a tournament, let's say, for example, you're in a tournament that's a few hundred players. So you only have to win maybe 2, 3, 4 rounds to get to the top 100, top 64. Then the best matches of the tournament start to happen. Everyone good against everyone good, right? The problem is when you go to a tournament that has so many players in it, even if those players are dog shit, all right, it can definitely take a toll on you. You can get worn out. You can get burnt out trying to play in this thing. Like, how many rounds do I have to beat to qualify for day 2? How long do I have to fucking be here in this ballroom grinding out against these fucking scrubs and nobodies? And then the worst part is you might actually run into someone good in the middle of a qualifying bracket and you're exhausted. You've been playing all day. Like, I got to play now against someone actually good? So I don't know. Like, I feel like the bigger the tournament gets, the more grueling it is. And there is something to say for these people who are playing in these ginormous 7,000 people tournaments and they're grinding it on getting to the end, that you got to get a level of respect there. At least the stamina level has got to be superb compared to back in the day when you were, even Evo back in the day was like 500 players. Now it's like 7,000. So it's like a pretty different thing.
Others are like, what the fuck is everybody doing during Street Fighter 4 days? Or they are called 09ers. Last Metroid's like, if everybody is new in Street Fighter 4, who the fuck played 2 and 3? What about the other games? That's crazy, because I remember when I came into the FGC, I first learned about the FGC, it was around 09, shortly after, right? Officially, when I started.
So he's an 09er. He's not there from back in the day. All right.
Doing content, it was around 2015. But I remember at that time, to say you were an 09er, you were looked at as a joke. You were looked at like a newbie, a rookie. You were fucking green. You were like, oh, he's an 09er, this fucking guy. Who's listening to this guy? It was literally an insult. Now, obviously, you say 09er, people are like, oh shit, you a OG. You a real one. You've been here forever. But nah, I remember the day when you were looked at like a damn joke. Anyway, continuing on right here, I see Speed Kick saying, I think we could say for sure there are more players who are competitive threats to elite players than just let people have different opinions on why, LOL. Flash Metroid adds saying the competition right now is not hard. Oh my God, here we go. He's getting deeper right here. He said, the competition right now is not hard. 90% of the new entrants are not good. Players these days have zero consistency or fundamentals. They enter 50 tournaments a week and perform in 2, and then they think they're clean. The best players right now are old. The best players right now are all old.
I don't know why Flash is so salty about like new players. Like, some of what he's saying is true. Yes, new players who are younger, they're seeing what it is they see internet content creation, right? And they see these players who are the top players they're wearing the jerseys and they're part of these teams and they're traveling the world and they say, oh, that's what I want to be. I want to aspire to be like that. Back in the day, none of that existed. Back in the day, you would look at the top players like Justin Wong or, Sanford Kelly and the like, and you'd be like, well, they're good, but like, what are they rich? Are they famous? No, they're just in the FGC. They are. But there's really nothing to be said. They don't have any internet presence or anything. It's just within this very small community, correct? Now it's like, now there's something to aspire to. So when you see that, of course, you're going to get way more new players. And of course, most of those new players are not going to be great, but they're going to be grinding and trying. And yeah, a lot of these kids are going to have the freedom to go to tournaments and stuff, but older people can't. Older people have, jobs and lives and families. They can't be traveling, grinding constantly. The younger people can. That's how it was for me too back in the day, where I was able to go to way more tournaments when I was in my 20s. I got older. I didn't want to do it anymore. I had other more important shit to do, Now, are they entering 50 tournaments a week? No. Are they performing in 2 a week and thinking they're clean? Probably. Because to the modern FGC, again, when everything is easy mode execution, the only thing left is that kind of mind gameplay. Did I execute properly, get them to the corner, 50-50 guess and win? And did I do that consistently? Oh, I'm good. Well, actually, you're probably not. But at the same time, that's the modern game. Like, that's the meta of the game. If you tried to play someone in an older fighting game that had way more to it than this easy, simple meta, you'd probably get your ass handed to you. You wouldn't even be able to play. You'd probably go home crying to your mommy. But that doesn't mean that you're bad at the games that are modern. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think some people are just very salty that modern fighting games are different. I'm one of them. Why? Because I played better games. And I wish that modern fighting games were as good as the old ones. But as we get older, I think we realize there's not much you can really do about that. They're going in this direction where they just want them all accessible to the masses to make mass money. They don't really care about the quality of the games they put out. They care about how much they can sell, right? It's just like anything. Why do you think movies get worse over time? TV shows get worse over time. Music sounds like diarrhea in your ear. Because you get older, you realize the stuff before was better, but now you're getting older, you don't like the modern stuff. That's what happens. It doesn't mean that the modern players are bad. It just means they're good at something that's different, and some people are just afraid of that, I get that because I'm part of that. I like the old school fighters. I wish there was another game that played like CVS 2 or Third Strike or Super Turbo, and there's not. There's no modern fighting games that play like old games. Instead, it's all based on get one hit and get a giant combo for flashiness so everyone can go, ooh, ah, or some simple meta that could be figured out in a day, and then the whole game's busted. But, Things aren't going to go back to the way they were unless there's demand for it. Will there ever be demand for old fighting games? No. Why? Because the modern ones are best sellers. If Street Fighter 6 tanked and didn't sell, then maybe things will go back to the way they were. But when you reward something, it will continue. If Street Fighter 6 is a great seller, they're not going to change it to go back to the old ways. So there's nothing that can really be done. Either you choose to perform in the modern era, how the way that things have adapted, or you go away. I went away. I said, bye, I don't like this. I didn't like Street Fighter 4 that much. I hated Street Fighter 5. Street Fighter 6 is decent, but I'm not going to grind away at a game where I don't really enjoy playing it at a competitive level. I think it's kind of boring because it's too samey and repetitive and just not that interesting to me. I'd much rather play Super Turbo or CVS2. So I'll play those games. And I'll let the new gen come in and swoop in and take over, and that's fine. But some people are salty and don't want to release that, I guess, right?
They're basically saying it's all the OGs. All the players that were good back then are the same players that are still good now. It's insane to me to try to claim Noah and Punk, who played in Street Fighter 4. I'm still waiting for someone to list these young killers so I can really destroy this ridiculous conversation. Oh, okay. Because he's like, you can't claim Noah or Punk because they were around back then. They were rocking in that game, technically, so they're a part of the group that he's talking about. He's like, where are these young killers? So I could destroy this conversation. But honestly, when I'm thinking of people that are still top 8s, top 32, or, taking home trophies, they're all the OGs. They're all the people that I fucking remember from when we was playing in the Street Fighter 4 days. And down here, we'll wrap it up. He said, bloated with horrible players. The only difference between playing back then and playing now is that now I face more bums before I get to the hard matches, and the bums now are way more random because they are now entering 3 or more events tomorrow.
Is he just complaining about the sheer number of players entering a tournament? Was that not? See, this is hilarious to me. Seriously, this is hilarious to me because back in the day, all right, the complaint was you would go to a tournament and you would enter, let's say it's a $5, $10 entry fee to get into the tournament, right? So you pay your $10 entry fee to enter, I don't know, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. The tournament has like 100, 200 players. Let's say it's a local, right? So 100, 200 players, you win the whole thing. Here's your reward, $70. Yeah, no, seriously, like back in the day, it was awful. There was no prizes, right? The rewards were all, you were playing for the love of the game. You were not playing for a big reward. So everyone always said, man, I hope the FGC one day will make it big. Back then, the big thing was MLG. So MLG was into Halo and stuff like that. And everyone was like, man, if only Street Fighter could go to MLG levels and could have a whole circuit based in there and could have teams of sponsorships, and then it would actually be profitable to play at a high level. We want to be there. We want to grow to that level. So now the FGC is at that level. You got Capcom Pro Tour, you got, other circuits, you got all these teams signing people, paying them to play and stuff. And now the complaint is, oh, there's too many bums. There's too many scrubs. Man, I go to a tournament, I got to beat like 17 scrubs before I get to a good match. Well, isn't that what you wanted? That was the complaint. That you were wasting all this time and money traveling and playing in tournaments and it wasn't profitable. You were actually losing money. You could actually be a top player back in the day and all you did was lose money. You couldn't make money being a pro. There was no pro Street Fighter player back in the day. Now there's pros and the complaint is there's too many bums. I want more bums. Bring in the bums. Bring me lines of bums to pad these pots and make it profitable for corporations to invest in them so there's money to be had. Or else you're spinning your wheels for the love of the game, but you're never going to make any money doing it. I'd be happy that there's more people. Seriously. I don't get his argument here.
We've heard this debate to death quite a few times, right? As far as like the old versus the news. I think Mena has brought it up quite a few times as well. I want to say Mena considers himself a part of the new group. I don't know when he officially started, but the way he kind of talks about it, he says like,
it's hilarious. They're all new group to me because none of these people obviously were around back in the day. These are people who all started at the very earliest in Street Fighter 4.
The competition-wise that he believes it's harder nowadays. I could be getting that wrong, but I think that's usually what his point of view is. And then you go into debate. Like speed kicks and other, just let people know, okay, there's more, like there's more numbers, but let people argue what elite actually means. What does that actually mean to you? Just leave it up to opinion because that's where it's going to fall at the end of the day. But Flash is taking it from the point of view is like, okay, there's just more bums. He was like, I have to face way more fucking random bums before I can get to the real shit. Because yes, there are more numbers, but that doesn't mean it's harder. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that scene from fucking 300. Remember when Gerard Butler, he took his men and they was off, took them soldiers and they were off to go do some battle. And then they linked up with another group that had more than them. And the guys were looking at Gerard and them and he was like, I brought more soldiers than you did. And Gerard was like, okay, what do you do? Pointing at their clique. What do you do? He's like, I'm a school teacher. Bullshit like that. What do you do? I take care of animals. He was like, okay, and what do you do? And then he points at his guys, yo, what do you do? And they were like, yeah, like we do war, bitch. And then he he looks back at them and says, I brought more warriors than you did. Don't get that shit twisted. Just because you have more numbers doesn't mean you got more people, more elite fighters than I do. It kind of reminds me of this argument right there. Just because there's more numbers nowadays doesn't mean y'all are more elite. Doesn't mean there's more killers, there's more sharks in these pools, baby. It just means there's more of y'all. And I guess the argument as well is the games are dumbing down. So people are gonna look at that with the new generation. Like, even if we have quadruple, whatever, more players, are like, okay, but look at the quality of the game versus what we had to go through back then. And I guess the main point that he's making is most of those guys that were there, because the FGC is technically not that old, because our OGs, or fucking people that started with it, are still here competing and they're still here winning. So I think it's a good point of view. Now,
but again, it's so weird to me to hear this because he's saying OGs are people from Street Fighter 4. They're not. OGs are people from the 90s and the 2000s who were there in the formative years of Street Fighter. All right, before Street Fighter was profitable, before Street Fighter had corporate sponsorship, before there was a tournament league, circuits, teams, and all that. The OGs are people who played the big four. All right, Super Turbo, CVS 2, Marvel 2, and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Anyone who was good in those games, those are the actual OGs. What he's talking about, or what they're talking about, are OGs from the modern Street Fighter era. Get it? The OGs they're referencing are 09ers. So the 09ers also are still the best at modern Street Fighter. My question is, what happened to the people who actually played these games when they were hard to play? They all are gone. You got someone like Justin Wong, who is still a big commentator, a big creator in the space, but he's definitely not a high-level top player in the modern games who's placing all the time and winning all the tournaments. He'd much rather cover it in a different way and add his extensive expertise in a way that is not just me playing the games competitively, right? Get it? And that's good. That's a good thing. But where are the real OGs? There's very few of them that are left. You know, you can argue Daigo still plays, Tokido still plays. There's a few. But most of the people from back in the day who were the big players are long gone. They're not playing the modern games. Why? Well, I'm sure there's various different answers. My answer is I know for a fact there's a large group of them who just don't want to play them because they're not fun to play for us. We grew up at a time where fighting games were hard to execute, hard to learn the frame timings, hard to do the combos. Everything was difficult. Lots of practice, lots of necessary experience. Not the meta's on the internet within a week. You can lab it out for a day, and now you know everything. Go have at it, kid, and pat him on the back. Back then, it was months to years of arduous grinding, time investment, money, travel, just to learn. There was nothing even on the internet to teach you the games. So it was very different. You know, today, I guess ever since the 09ers, right? Since YouTube and streaming, it's a lot different. And so they're having their own arguments among their own community about what's OG versus newcomers, when the actual OGs are sitting back like, what the hell are you talking about? None of you could even play the old games at all. Good luck doing the frames, the one frame links and shit from back in the day. Good luck full parrying something in Street Fighter 3. Good luck executing these crazy refly combos. You couldn't do any of that.
Is it the end-all be-all? Who's to say? Because I guess a lot of it's going to be opinion. But I will say, Flash does make a hell of a point. How y'all feeling? Let me know. All right,
and that's the debate. But the one thing that I'll say, the funny part about that is Flash Metroid who's saying all this. And Flash Metroid is essentially an 09er, meaning he was there back in the day playing the classics, but he wasn't that great. He was okay. He didn't come out into his own until the Street Fighter 4 era where he started playing competitively and doing really good. So even for him to act like, oh, the OGs, you're not even an OG. You're really not. This whole debate is weird to me because I'm from a different era, or I am. And to me, none of these modern fighting games are hard to play. That's the problem. Like, take a look at a game like City of the Wolves that just came out, okay? I played the first wave of the beta, all right? And I started playing, I'm like, so there's really no execution to this game. All it is you do one special move, you cancel to the next special move, then you do this move, you do a giant combo that's like 60, 70% damage. You could do it within a few minutes. You could figure it out. Back in the day, if you actually wanted to do a giant custom combo, you had to practice, you had to grind, you had to figure it out. Like, well, how is this fun then? There's no era of discovery. There's no era of anything. It's just everything's just given to you, handed to you right up front. Here's all the easy tools to do everything in this game. So it takes out the element that's fun to me. It really does. Like, I think a lot of people back in the day, that was part of the experience, was going to the arcade, competing, discovering tech, the camaraderie, all of that shit. You know what I'm saying? It confuses me because I feel like the true OGs, the people from back in the day, that's why they're not competing anymore. It's not because, oh, the games are too hard, the new gen has moved in and swooped in and taken over. The OGs could never hang. No, the OGs don't want to hang. They're bored with your games. Get it? The OGs think that Street Fighter 6 is such a boring game because it's so repetitive, it's so samey. You can't discern player from player unless you're looking at the names on the screen because the tech is so easy to execute. Everyone plays it the same. There's nothing interesting there. The first year of Street Fighter 6 was great. The moment that everything was discovered, the meta was discovered, the game's boring as dirt. I don't want to play it anymore. I'll go back to Street Fighter 6 when Sagat comes out. Why? Because I like Sagat. He's a cool character. He's been in Street Fighter since the beginning. I'll see how he plays in Street Fighter 6. I'll play it for a little bit, and then I'll probably get bored and drop it again. But no, the OGs didn't quit or can't hang with the new generation. That's ridiculous. The OGs just don't like the game. That's why they're not playing it. I get a test, and there's tons of people that I know who I've been talking to recently who are like, yeah, we just don't want to play. The modern games are dog water bullshit. They're terrible. They're not fun to play at all. Okay, let's do shout-outs, all right? We've got UB. Oh, by the way, I will say one final thing to Button Check here, and I'll even say it on the screen. I believe his name is Ernesto or Button Check. Your content is actually quite good. You cover things well. You've covered me before, but he keeps saying, I don't know how to find DSP's content. It's here on DSP Gaming. If you get it from anywhere else, it's out of context, and they've probably taken anything interesting out. You're just watching highlights that are not going to be the full story. Just watch this on my podcast here on DSP Gaming, the June 22nd episode of the Level 1 podcast. That's where you can find the original content. Who knows if he'll actually see that, because he'll probably just see the clips, but it would be nice if he could actually see the real content, because he only sees the clips and he never gets to see the whole thing of what I'm saying, you know? Okay. Anyway. All right. So, shout-outs. We've got Ubi Ubi, who became a member this morning. Thank you to Ubi Ubi for